Looking now at the pancreas, which, as we know, is both an exocrine and an endocrine gland. Remember, it's retroperitoneal. It's got the head, the tail, the body. So, pancreatic hormones. 1 to 2 million islets. Remember, in the midst of all the acinar cells, which make the digestive enzymes, are these little tiny islands, which are islets. 98% of organ produces digestive enzymes, so the pancreas is mostly exocrine. It's a digestive, but it doesn't mean that the endocrine secretions are not just as important. So insulin from the beta cells, we already know about insulin, secreted in the fed state after a meal with carbs, lowers blood glucose levels, all right? Stimulates glucose and amino acid uptake by a factor of like 20. Also stimulates glycogenesis and lipogenesis. If you're pulling glucose out of the blood, once the cells fill up, then you got to fill up your glycogen reserves, and then you start packing it away as adipose. It antagonizes glucagon, so these hormones basically counteract each other, and which makes sense. They can't both really be active at the same time. Glucagon from the alpha cells does just the opposite. Very low carb and high protein diet or fasting. So in other words, when you don't have a ready supply of glucose available, glucagon takes charge, tries to make sure there's plenty of glucose, all right? Stimulates basically the opposite of what insulin did. Stimulates glycogenolysis, lipolysis, and gluconeogenesis. All of those will raise blood glucose. And somatostatin from the delta cells basically says, hey, everything's cool. You guys can both, just take the day off, okay? Paracrine secretion, so this works within the pancreas, basically to inhibit the activity of both alpha and beta cells. It is actually the same chemical compound as growth hormone inhibiting hormone. But notice here it's working as a paracrine, whereas GHIH is working as an endocrine, as a hormone. So the two pancreatic hormones here, we talk about hyperglycemic hormones. Hyperglycemic, making extra glucose. So hyperglycemic hormones are ones that raise blood glucose. So who's going to do that? Well, glucagon, of course, but so does growth hormone. If you're growing, you need energy. So do epinephrine and norepinephrine, and cortisol and corticosterone. Both of those, all four of those, in response to stress. If you're under stress, that means you need more energy to survive. So that's why all of those will raise blood glucose. A hypoglycemic hormone is one that lowers blood glucose. That's insulin, all right? Insulin, by the way, was the first protein whose primary structure was completely determined, and British biochemist Frederick Sanger got the Nobel Prize in '58. It's really something. I read about that. It took them, months, years to figure it out. And when I worked over in the ion channel lab at the U of A Medical School, when we needed a protein sequence, we would take it over to the sequencing lab, and they would say, do you need it this afternoon, or would it be okay if we get it back to you tomorrow? So ovaries, continuing in our cavalcade of endocrine organs, there are these granulosa cells in the wall of the ovarian follicle. Produces estradiol during the first half of the menstrual cycle. Estradiol is sort of the main estrogen. Remember I mentioned before, estrogens are really a category of hormones, of which estradiol, there's also estriol and estrone, and I think there's another one. Also the corpus luteum, which is the follicle after ovulation. So remember, the egg is surrounded by a big package of nutrients. That's the follicle. And after ovulation, the corpus luteum becomes a temporary endocrine organ. Produces estradiol and progesterone for 12 days or 8 to 12 weeks with pregnancy. So if there's no implanted egg, it's active for about 2 weeks. If there is, it's active for 2 to 3 months, or whatever that turns out to be. Yeah, thereabouts. So estradiol and progesterone, development of the female reproductive system and physique, including bone growth. So these are being secreted during puberty as part of the development. And then after that, they regulate the menstrual cycle, and they will also, if the egg implants, they will sustain pregnancy. And we'll see later, well, no, actually won't, because we're skipping reproductive because of the shortened semester. But they basically take turns being in charge during different parts of the menstrual cycle. They also prepare the mammary glands for lactation. Both secrete inhibin, which suppresses FSH. So, in other words, if we got things underway, we don't need to stimulate the follicle anymore. So, again, just homeostasis, just homeostatic mechanisms to keep things under control. The testes, then, for males, there are these interstitial cells, and again, interstitial, that's in the space between the seminiferous tubules. They produce testosterone and estrogen. Both of those are steroid hormones, and they're both present in both males and females. So, testes, during puberty, that's the development of the male reproductive system and physique, the broadening of the shoulders, the deepening of the voice, all those changes characteristic of puberty. Sustains sperm production and sex drive. Sex drive is necessary in order to make sure that we keep creating more humans. The sustanacular, used to be called Sertoli cells, secrete inhibin, which suppresses FSH and stabilizes sperm production rates. Once again, homeostasis. You need to keep things within a very narrow range. So you have some things that promote, some things that inhibit. That's a normal part of homeostasis. We've seen this so many times. In addition to endocrine organs, there are other organs we don't consider to be primarily endocrine that nonetheless have some endocrine function. So as we've talked many times, the heart secretes atrial and natriuretic peptide. There are baroreceptors in the atrial walls. In the case of high blood pressure, they secrete ANP. BNP from the brain is only a tiny factor. It's mostly ANP. We know what that does. Always need to pee. So it's going to promote the secretion of sodium into the urine. Water will follow. We lower stroke volume, and therefore we lower blood pressure. Skin helps produce vitamin D3. So remember, skin, liver, and kidney all contribute to the production of vitamin D. Liver, roughly 15% of EPO, and stimulates the bone marrow to produce red blood cells as well. So, this is one that the endurance athletes use to cheat, the marathon runners, the long distance cyclists. Angiotensinogen, liver makes those zymogens, the precursors, the pro-hormones. That's going to be part of the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, precursor of angiotensin II. Liver also a source of insulin-like growth factor 1, which works with growth hormone to produce growth. Oh my God. The insulin-like growth factors, there are a lot of growth factors, a lot of research on growth factors, nerve growth factor, epithelial growth factor. These are powerful hormone-like substances that help regulate the human body. Liver converts vitamin D3 to calcidiol, right, and then it's the kidney who ultimately produces calcitriol. Hepcidin as well promotes intestinal absorption of iron. You need iron, of course, for hemoglobin. And just like we saw, intrinsic factor helps you absorb vitamin B12. Calcitriol helps you absorb calcium. Well, hepcidin promotes intestinal absorption of iron. You have to get it into your body before you can use it. And continuing then, the kidneys, most of your EPO converts angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1. That's where that happens. And converts calcidiol to calcitriol, the active form of vitamin D. Calcitriol increases intestinal absorption, so and inhibits the loss in the urine. Try to keep calcium available so that you can do bone deposition. Little kids need to grow. Stomach and small intestines have a bunch of hormones, which we mentioned some of them, CCK and secretin and others. So I'm not emphasizing all those little ones, but there are a bunch. Coordinate digestive motility and secretion. And the placenta secretes estrogen and progesterone and some others. That's helping to regulate pregnancy, stimulate development of the fetus and the mammary glands. So lots of other things are involved in secreting hormones as well. And Here you go from a student exam. Sketch a human body and locate the following. Nice work. I would have given credit for this. I love the Kung Fu gland. Mr. Thug Life. Alright, let's start looking at the different types of hormones. Some hormone chemistry, there are several categories that differ from one another. So first are the steroids. These are all derived from, look in the upper right corner there, you can see that's what they look like. Notice how they have that 4-ring structure? They all come from cholesterol. Cholesterol is the basis for all of the steroid hormones, including the sex steroids, the corticosteroids. That's why cholesterol is essential for human life. We have to have steroid hormones, and cholesterol is necessary to make them. Peptides and glycoproteins. So peptides, again, these are small proteins, glycoproteins, proteins with little sugars on them. Oxytocin and antidiuretic hormone are both peptides. All of the releasing and inhibiting hormones of the hypothalamus, so all of the RH and IH hormones are peptides. They're little tiny proteins, all right? And most of the anterior pituitary hormones are peptides as well. So this is by far the biggest category. Most of the hormones in your body are peptides, all right? Then, in addition, the monoamines, these are derived from amino acids. They're not exactly amino acids, they're amino acid-like. These are the catecholamines and melatonin. And the weird one here is thyroid hormone. We're going to come back and take a look at that. Thyroid hormone is a monoamine, but in many ways it behaves kind of like a steroid. We'll see why that's true coming up, okay? Oxytocin and ADH, by the way, are extremely similar. Look, there's only a couple of amino acids difference between them. ADH, also known as vasopressin, and that's because it raises blood pressure. Both of those are derived from vasotocin. They evolve from vasotocin. And that's what you see in a lot of the so-called lower animals. Birds and reptiles don't have both ADH and oxytocin. They have vasotocin. And it's not hard to see how something like that could have happened. Look at how oxytocin, antidiuretic hormone, again, so similar to one another, just a couple amino acids different. They both originally came from vasotocin. And there's a long-eared owl, and if that isn't an awesome-looking bird, I don't know what is. And there's a western diamondback. I took that picture, by the way. People always ask me, what kind of telephoto lens did you use? And I say, no, I used a macro lens. I was about 10 inches away from this guy. He was sleeping in a wash, and so I got down on my stomach, and I just crawled towards him, snapping pictures as I got closer and closer. So at one point he woke up, started flicking his tongue, so then I started backing up. Okay, which hormone not secreted by the adrenal cortex? Remember, GFR, salt, sugar, sex. Which one is not one of those? Yeah, that's right, glucagon. Okay? And, yeah. This is a place called the Maze. Again, I think I've talked about that before. Very remote, southern Utah. That's the land of standing rocks off in the distance. In the foreground, those are they call them the chocolate drops, but that was actually miscopied from a map. They should have been the chocolate bars, which makes a lot more sense. Maze is just a huge series of interconnected canyons that are just gorgeous. And there I am playing my guitar, and that's the bottle of, that's Coraleo Añejo. That was Jillian Tati that gave me that. So, okay kids, I'll see you in the next one.